This is part of the charging setup I have. This is the 11 kilowatt 3-phase EVSC charger that I borrowed from the Toka Club, Tesla Owners Club. That's what I primarily use for charging 3 phases like this. It gives me the full 11 kilowatts, but I've got other options as well. In fact, this is everything I've got. So I've got a good old-fashioned caravan 15 amp extension cord if I have to charge from a caravan park. I've got my type 2 to type 2 converter. Haven't used that yet on the trip, but I use that a lot in Sydney. I've got my standard UMC, which has a single phase 32 amp. That's what I use at home. Gives me 7 kilowatts. I have a 3-phase tail, again, because that only can do 7 kilowatts, whereas the other one I had showed before could do 11, so I always use the other one. This is like a backup, and that comes with a 15 amp tail, and it's got the 10 amp tail in there as well. So I've got 10 amp, 15 amp, 32 amp single phase, 32 amp 3-phase. And also the Tesla Owner Club threw in this box, which converts a 20 amp plug, so can't quite show you, but it's a slightly smaller version of that, into a 3-phase plug. So I can do a 20 amp outlet as well, which is pretty rare. I don't think I'll ever use it, but that's where it's there. So I've basically got every sort of plug covered, but plus a bit of redundancy with that charger, being able to do 3-phase if my other one doesn't work. So it all fits in the front trunk of the long range. Not a very big front, but it all fits in there nicely, and that's what I use for charging. I'll try and explain a little bit about what I mean by 3-phase. So this is a typical 3-phase plug used in Australia. Now, I'm not going to say I know exactly which pin is which, but essentially the middle pin is probably ground, and let's say the top pin is neutral, and therefore there'll be 3 phases. These are the 3 pins here. This one will be a 240 volt from the neutral, and up to 32 amps. Now power is measured by volts times amps, so 240 times 32 amps is about 7,400-ish watts, which is what power is measured in, so 7.4 kilowatts. Then you have another circuit, which is this one, this phase, this 240 volt across to that neutral, and that'll be another 7.4 kilowatts. And another one, a 3rd phase, like 3 independent circuits, as if you've plugged 3 power points into a normal household socket and you've somehow combined them into one plug. So 3 7.4 give you a maximum of 22 kilowatts that can be drawn through this thing, which is quite a lot of power. Now these are all AC. So they're all running at 50 hertz, which means it's kind of like a sine wave. The voltage over time is a sine wave. And they're called phases because they're slightly out of phase. There's one that sort of has a loop like that, and the next one starts a bit later. And so it's a sort of a circuit design where you can combine all 3 phases into one phase with some really simple electronic circuitry to give you either very high volts or very high current. Now, I don't know what the Tesla does with those 3. There's a box there that does something, and obviously the car has a charger which can interpret 3-phase and try and get the maximum power that combine all those circuits to give you the potentially 22 kilowatts. And that's what it would do on a Model S. A Model 3 though, it's limited on its charger inside the car to only do 11 kilowatts, which means it can only pull 16 amps per phase. So 240 by 16 is about 3.5. 240 by 16, 240 by 16, 3.5, add them all together, you get about 11 kilowatts. And it's all roughly because the voltage can vary from say 250 to 230, so you can't always be exact on that. The unusual thing today though is that we had this normal old plug which I've been using everywhere, but it doesn't fit in this circuit. It's too big to go in there. That's because that one is this is a bit smaller. That's a 20 amp circuit. See, this one's a bit smaller. Can't really show it there. One on the right is a bit smaller. This is an Australian 20 amp three-phase circuit. Same idea, but it's limited to 20 amps. So I needed the box to convert that size socket into this size socket. And this is the box that does it. Probably given to me by the Tesla Owner Club to blend. So basically it plugs into the smaller one and then has the outlet one of the bigger one there. Now because that outlet can theoretically take 32 amps, but it can only supply 20 amps, it needs a circuit breaker in there. And the circuit breaker just says, you know, if you're trying to pull more than 20 amps, I'm just going to trip and stop you doing it. Doesn't bother me because, like I said, I only pull 16 amps per circuit, and so therefore I'm never going to worry me. But if I had a Model S, I would have to down tune the current draw to be less than 20 amps. Anyway, it's the first time I've had to use it, but it's been very good because it's let me charge up overnight on this 20 amp plug at the Beagle Motor Inn in Katherine. This is all my charging equipment laid out, and we're going to go through what you absolutely need and maybe what you don't need for an outback trip. So let's start off with the basics. You're going to have a UMC that comes with the car. It's got a standard 240 volt plug or tail they call it, and it also comes with a 15 amp tail. So you've already got that. That's a good start. Caravan parks and normal houses you can charge from. But you want to also have the option of charging from three-phase. Three-phase is the universal plug out in the outback, so that's a tail that goes on there. And that'll get you by. You only charge at 7 kilowatts, which means you can take a long time to charge. So if you only took that layout, you would really be travelling less than the range of your car every day and charging overnight with a three-phase. It'd be very hard to charge during the day and do say 500, 600 kilometres, because you're going to be charging for 3 or 4, 5, 6 hours in the middle of the day. And that's okay if you're the only person there, but if someone else is there, they don't want to wait around for that long, and you don't want to wait around that long either. So bare minimum, if you're only doing less than the range of your car a day, a slow trip through the outback, that's all you need. A couple of little add-ons that are very handy. Just get some extension cords. This is a Caravan extension cord, 15 amps, so it's got the fat earth plug. Get those from Bunnings Hardware. They're about 25 bucks. 10 meters is all you need. Same with a normal household extension cord. Get another 10 meter one of those, because often the plugs aren't quite where you park the car. So those two extension cords plus this, you could do an outback trip. But really, you're going to have to get one of these as well. This is it does 22 kilowatts, but for us, for a Model 3, it does 11 kilowatts. And that allows you to charge during the day for a few hours and get along those 500 or 600 kilometre journeys. Now, you can't hire that from the Tesla Owners Club. There's not many to hire, so you've got to be careful. Or you could buy one for about $1,000, $1,300. I actually think you should buy one if you're going to get one, because it just makes the trip doable. Now, you only need the three-phase plug adaptation. You don't need to worry about all the other kits because you've got it covered with your UMC already. So this is your primary charging thing. It does 11 kilowatts, reasonably fast. So I think that would be the minimum you would need to do an outback trip, really. Enjoyable outback trip. A couple of things worth taking though is, see at the back there is sort of cable covers. So if you're charging across a walkway, it's good to have those. I think I got those from Bunnings for about 10 bucks. Very handy. Just makes it a bit more safer workplace, because charging a car is a little bit of a trip hazard and people aren't quite used to it. Even though I never use my Type 2 to Type 2 cable, I think it's worth bringing along anyway. it's a good thing to have. It's just sort of the scenarios might come up where you just need to use it. So I think they're worth having in general for a Model 3 or any electric car. So I brought mine along. Things you don't need is this smaller adapter for 3-phase. They're very rare. There's only one place I saw, which was the Beagle Hotel in Catherine, and really I had other options to charge at the caravan park or the showgrounds. So I used it, but I didn't really need to use it. And the other thing I didn't use was this. This is called a single phase 32 amp tail for the UMC. I used that at home, so I already had it, but I never found a plug that would suit that. So that's kind of the summary of the charging. Like I said, that is your picture of what you need really to do an outback trip. This is the overall type of charger used for both Sydney to Darwin and Darwin back to Sydney. And as you can see, the 3-phase was heavily used, 22 times, and you really need that faster 11 kilowatt version, like I said earlier in the video, just because you use it so often. Saying that, some of these spots have been infilled by DC chargers. I've noticed that since this video started, Long Reach now has a DC charger, so that would help travelling through that Queensland area. But like I said before, you really need 3-phase is your friend out there. There's heaps of spots to charge from, so you need a good charger that uses that capacity.